The wind blew briskly through the quiet streets of Park Ridge, Illinois, on October 26, 1947, as Dorothy Rodham held her newborn daughter in her arms. The world didn't stop to mark the occasion. No newspapers ran headlines, no trumpets sounded. But in that modest hospital room, something extraordinary had begun. A story that would eventually reach the halls of power and history. They named her Hilary Diane Rodham, a name that would, decades later, carry both reverence and controversy. But in those early years she was simply Hilary, a bright-eyed, curious little girl with a tenacity that often startled the adults around her. Her father, Hugh Rodham, was a man of grit and discipline. A staunch Republican and textile businessman, Hugh believed in hard work, self-reliance, and the value of earning your place in the world. He was not one for coddling or compliments, and Hilary quickly learned that success was not given but earned. Her mother Dorothy was her opposite in many ways, soft-spoken, warm, but forged in fire. Dorothy had survived a deeply painful childhood, abandoned by her parents and forced to work as a housemaid at just 14. That past made her fiercely protective of her own children, especially Hilary. She often whispered words into Hilary's ear that would stay with her forever. "You have a voice. Use it." And Hilary did. By the time she was 5, Hilary was organising neighbourhood games, refereeing squabbles between kids twice her size, and standing up to bullies on the playground. At home, she sat at the kitchen table, chin resting in her palm, listening intently to adult conversations about politics, religion, and the news of the day. Unlike most children, she didn't just want to play house, she wanted to run it. Faith played a central role in her childhood. The Rodhams attended a Methodist church where Hilary absorbed the core values of compassion, justice, and public service. "Do all the good you can, for all the people you can, for as long as you can," the pastor would say. Those words echoed in her head long after the Sunday sermons ended. In school, Hilary excelled. Her teachers noticed her hunger for knowledge, her love for books, and her knack for debate. She wasn't the loudest child in class, but when she spoke, people listened. Even then, her classmates sensed she was destined for something different, something bigger. One story often told in the Rodham household was about the time young Hilary wrote a letter to NASA, asking how she could become an astronaut. She was crushed when they replied that women weren't being accepted into the program. But instead of giving up, Hilary looked for another way to reach the stars. If she couldn't fly into space, maybe she'd build something just as vast right here on Earth. Those early years were not without hardship. Hilary was deeply affected by the injustices she saw around her. When she was just 13, she convinced her church youth group to travel to inner-city Chicago to volunteer with underprivileged children. What she witnessed there, the poverty, the inequality, the desperation, etched itself into her mind. This wasn't just a field trip, this was a mirror, a challenge, a call. And Hilary answered. By the time Hilary reached her teenage years, Park Ridge felt both safe and small, a quiet suburb where dreams often stayed dreams. But Hilary had no intention of staying inside anyone's idea of a box. She had questions, opinions, and a fire inside her that refused to flicker out. She was no longer just a precocious girl in pigtails. She was becoming a young woman with purpose. At Maine East High School, Hilary Rodham quickly stood out, not for flash or popularity, but for something much deeper. She was the one asking questions that made teachers pause, the one organising school events, captaining sports teams, and staying late after class to help others. She joined student council, the debating team, the newspaper staff, any space where ideas and leadership could bloom. Still, it wasn't always easy. Hilary was navigating her identity in a world that still whispered to girls, "Be quiet, be polite, let the boys lead." But she had no interest in shrinking herself. Her parents encouraged her curiosity and ambition. "Do your best," her father would say with a stern nod. "Do what's right," her mother would add, holding her gaze. She listened, she absorbed, and she kept pushing forward. Around this time, her political consciousness began to sharpen. She was at first a proud Goldwater girl, a supporter of Conservative Senator Barry Goldwater in the 1964 presidential election. Raised in a Republican household, it made sense. But Hillary wasn't someone who accepted ideas blindly. She read voraciously. She debated passionately. And with every page turned, with every new voice she heard, her views began to evolve. One moment that cracked something wide open inside her came in 1963. Hillary was just 16 when her youth minister took her to hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak in Chicago. The room was packed, electric with hope and pain. Dr. King's words thundered through the hall and into her heart. She left that night changed. There was a world beyond Park Ridge, vast, wounded, and waiting. And Hillary wanted to do more than just live in it. She wanted to shape it. During her senior year, she transferred to Maine South High School after a district split. But the fire inside her didn't dim. She graduated near the top of her class in 1965, her achievements spanning academics, athletics, and service. She was, by all accounts, a leader, but not yet the kind the world knew. Hillary had already turned down offers from elite colleges to stay closer to home. But when she chose Wellesley College, a prestigious all-women's school in Massachusetts, it wasn't just about education. It was about finding her voice in a space where women were taught not just to learn, but to lead. With a suitcase in hand and ambition in her veins, Hillary Rodham left the Midwest. She wasn't just going to college. She was stepping into her future. Wellesley College in the late 1960s was more than just an academic institution. It was a crucible for change. The war in Vietnam raged across headlines. Civil rights marches filled the streets. The world felt as though it was spinning faster, teetering on the edge of revolution. And into that whirlwind stepped an 18-year-old from Park Ridge, measured, driven, and ready to grow. Hillary Rodham arrived at Wellesley in 1965, full of resolve. She was serious, focused, and more interested in studying than parties. While some students were drawn to protest signs and shouting crowds, Hillary was drawn to policy, process, and practical solutions. Change, she believed, wasn't just about noise. It was about strategy. But college challenged her, not just intellectually, but emotionally and spiritually. Wellesley was filled with bright, opinionated women from every corner of the country. For the first time, Hillary wasn't the smartest or the most outspoken in the room, and she loved it. Debate became her oxygen. She read everything she could: political theory, philosophy, civil rights law, history. She began to see the world not as black and white, but layered, flawed, and full of possibility. Though she arrived as a young Republican, her views began to shift, sometimes painfully so. The Vietnam War deeply disturbed her. The assassinations of Martin Luther King Jr. and Robert Kennedy shook her. She began to question authority, including her own early beliefs. By her junior year, Hillary had shed her Republican identity and was leaning into progressive politics, driven by the belief that government could and should be used to improve people's lives. At Wellesley, she wasn't just learning about the world, she was learning about herself. She became president of the student government and led initiatives to reform outdated policies on campus. Her leadership wasn't loud or flashy, it was steady, thoughtful, and tireless. She was the kind of person who stayed up all night crafting a speech or writing a letter to the administration while others slept or complained. In her senior year, Hillary made history again. In 1969, Wellesley invited Senator Edward Brooke to speak at graduation. For the first time, the school allowed a student speaker to respond publicly. The honor went to Hillary Rodham. Her speech, calm but passionate, respectful but bold, captured national attention. She challenged the establishment while acknowledging its necessity. She spoke of frustration, hope, duty, and power. Life magazine ran a photo of her. Newspapers across the country quoted her lines. In a few minutes, Hillary had transformed from a bright student to a rising public voice. But fame didn't distract her. After Wellesley, she went straight to Yale Law School, a natural next step for someone who saw law as a tool for justice. There, she would dive deeper into legal theory, public policy, and advocacy for the marginalized. But Yale was also where her personal story took a fateful turn, because in a quiet library at Yale, she noticed a tall, charismatic classmate who wouldn't stop looking at her. And just like that, Hillary Rodham met Bill Clinton. But that story of ambition, love, and the cost of shared power was just beginning. Yale Law School was a world unto itself, brimming with idealists, rebels, prodigies, and powerhouses. It wasn't just where legal careers were born, it was where movements found their leaders, where young minds wrestled with the country's most stubborn injustices. Hillary Rodham, freshly arrived from Wellesley, brought with her not just academic brilliance but a growing fire for reform. She was drawn to child advocacy, civil rights, and the idea that the law could be wielded like a chisel, slowly reshaping society. At Yale, she dove into her studies, spending late nights in libraries, analysing case law, and volunteering for causes that tugged at her heart. Her work at the Yale Child Study Centre and New Haven Legal Services gave her a clearer picture of the world's hidden wounds, broken families, voiceless children, and systems built to fail the most vulnerable. But in between the intense study sessions and court briefings, life had other plans. One afternoon in the law library, Hillary noticed him, a tall, curly-haired student who kept turning to look at her over his books. His smile was disarming, his southern drawl unmistakable. He was smart, brilliant in fact, but unpretentious. His name was Bill Clinton, and he had come from Arkansas with big dreams and an easy charm. Their connection was instant, yet complex. Hillary was methodical, guarded, fiercely independent. Bill was relaxed, magnetic, a storyteller who could make a room laugh and lean in all at once. But beneath their differences was a shared belief that public service was sacred and that politics, when done right, could change lives. They challenged each other, supported each other. They stayed up late discussing policy and the future. He encouraged her to speak more boldly. She pushed him to think more deeply. In each other they found not just love, but partnership. Still, Hillary wasn't the kind of woman who lost herself in romance. She was building a future of her own. During law school, she interned at the Children's Defense Fund and worked on investigations into the education and healthcare rights of underserved kids. Her senior thesis at Wellesley, on the tactics of radical organizer Saul Alinsky, had already shown her deep concern for those without power. After Yale, Bill returned to Arkansas to teach and prepare for a life in politics. Hillary faced a choice. She had job offers in Washington, D.C. She could have joined prestigious firms, lived in a big city, followed a clear path to success. But she surprised everyone, maybe even herself. She followed Bill to Arkansas. It wasn't because she needed him. It was because she believed in both of their futures. There, she joined the University of Arkansas School of Law as a professor, the first woman ever hired in that role. She adapted quickly to Southern life, navigating the cultural shifts with grace, but never losing her Northern resolve or her name. Still, Hillary Rodham, for now. She and Bill would walk through farmers' markets hand in hand, talk policy over dinner, and build community ties. He was already dreaming of running for office, and Hillary was right beside him, equal parts advisor, critic, and believer. In 1974, she served as a staff attorney for the House Judiciary Committee during the Watergate scandal. As the nation watched Richard Nixon resign in disgrace, Hillary quietly worked behind the scenes, helping uphold the rule of law. She returned to Arkansas that year with a sharpened edge and a deeper sense of duty. The future was calling, and together they were preparing to answer it. In 1975, Hillary Rodham and Bill Clinton were married in a small ceremony at their Fayetteville home. Her name remained her own, a symbol of identity and independence. It was a modern choice that would stir controversy in the years to come. But Hillary had never been one to conform for comfort. What lay ahead was a life like few others, marked by love, sacrifice, power, and storms no one could fully predict. But for now, she had found her place not just in the law or in love, but in the battle to shape a better world. The wedding was simple, modest even. A few friends, family, a small house in Fayetteville, Arkansas. But the moment Hillary Rodham said "I do" to Bill Clinton in 1975, she wasn't just marrying a man. She was committing to a future far more uncertain and demanding than most brides could imagine. She was now part of the South, a professor at the University of Arkansas School of Law, and the wife of a man with a powerful dream to change the world through public office. But Hillary had dreams of her own, and she didn't plan on shrinking to fit into someone else's. Still, she was adapting. Slowly. She learned to say yawl without flinching. She shook hands with farmers and teachers. But she also stirred curiosity, and sometimes suspicion. A northern-educated, pantsuit-wearing, unmarried professor who kept her maiden name? In conservative Arkansas, that was enough to raise eyebrows, and Hillary knew it. But she didn't flinch. She never did. In 1976, Bill was elected Attorney General of Arkansas, and 2 years later, at just 32, he became one of the youngest governors in American history. And with that, Hillary Rodham found herself the First Lady of Arkansas, but she was no ordinary political spouse. She kept her law practice and joined the Rose Law Firm, where she became the first female partner in its history. She also served on multiple boards, including Arkansas Children's Hospital, Walmart, and Legal Services Corporation. And her work was never just about prestige, it was about impact. She poured herself into education reform, health initiatives for children, and efforts to uplift working-class families. Still, criticism followed her like a shadow. Why didn't she take her husband's name? Why did she work so much? Why didn't she focus more on homemaking and less on politics? The questions were endless and laced with judgment. When Bill lost his re-election campaign in 1980, some blamed Hillary, said she was too ambitious, too feminist, too northern. That year also brought something far more important than politics. Chelsea Victoria Clinton was born. Becoming a mother changed Hillary in ways no election ever could. She was still driven, still working, but there was a new layer of purpose. She wanted to build a better world for her daughter, to show her that a woman could be smart and strong, loving and relentless, bold and compassionate. In 1982, Bill made a comeback, winning the governorship again. But this time, Hillary made changes too. She began using the name Hillary Clinton, a political compromise, some said, a gesture of goodwill. Maybe it was. But it was also a calculation, a recognition that to push her work further, she'd have to pick her battles. That moment was the start of a recurring theme in her life, balancing authenticity with adaptation. Through the 1980s, she became one of the most influential women in Arkansas. She chaired the Arkansas Education Standards Committee, led initiatives for children and families, and became a trusted advisor to her husband, not just behind the scenes but publicly. She was smart, strategic, and unapologetically involved. And as the decade drew to a close, the whispers began to grow louder. Bill Clinton, they said, wasn't finished rising. Washington might be next. And if he went, she would go with him, not just as a political wife, but as a force in her own right. We have to put a hold here, and we know you can't wait to get to the end of the Hillary Clinton story, but trust me, the last part of the episode, which will be out in no time, I'm not going to leave you hanging. Part 2 is just around the corner. Hit on the subscribe button, turn the notifications and get ready for the ride. The real drama's just about to start on the next part, and you'll be the first to know when it drops. I want you to tell me something we need to know. Thank you so much and God bless you.